Afternoon. Thank you for being here, sir. Administrator Pekoske, I'd like to bring up TSA's work specifically on cybersecurity. On March 7th of this year, TSA issued a cyber-related Joint Emergency Security Program Amendment, EA 2301, for certain TSA-regulated airports and aircraft operators to implement cybersecurity measures. Under this EA, airports and aircraft operators, including Tampa International Airport, which serves many of my constituents, are required to transmit sensitive information to TSA over email. I am concerned that this is potentially putting that very sensitive information at risk in the event of a cyber attack against TSA. All of this information from airports around the country could be accessed by a bad actor. And so my question will begin here. If it is standard practice of TSA, which I understand it is, to conduct extensive on-site inspections of critical cyber-related systems, why is TSA now implementing this process that would require transmission via email of this type of sensitive information for storage about critical airport and airline systems at your site?
Yes, ma'am, great question, and we benefited significantly from the input from our airport and airline partners on this, and we have changed that policy where they can keep that information locally. We'll inspect it locally.
That is great to hear. And in fact, you just led into one of my other questions. I would love to hear more about that. What kind of engagement did you have with the stakeholders in the airports in making changes or revisions to that policy?
I would say, and you know, the airports and the carriers would be a good group of people to ask as well. I think we have a really very productive and positive relationship with the owners and operators of critical infrastructure, airports and airlines, very much included in that category. And we have regular dialogue back and forth all the time. We understand the concern. We looked at it carefully. We think we could provide some mitigations for it, but I didn't want that issue to be the issue that prevented us from making progress on improving cyber protections and improving cyber resiliency. And so, fair point. Let's just go to the site and look at the data that they have there. It makes sense from my perspective, and really, I value the fact that airports and airlines feel that they can come back and say to us, "No, hey, we disagree with that." And importantly, we will listen to what they say, consider carefully what they say, and generally we provide an answer that I think at the end of the day, both of us walking away would say, that makes sense, and let's just move forward.
So just to be sure that I'm clear, so then at this point, that is no longer the requirement, that they take that information and email it to TSA for storage there?
That's correct.
All right, very good. And tell me generally, what policies and practices does TSA have in place for itself to protect in the event of a cyber attack or incident?
Yes, ma'am. And you know, one of the president's executive orders is to make sure that the federal government leads in this regard, because many of us are placing requirements on private sector entities and other levels of government entities. And so we wanted to make sure that we were setting the right example in that regard. And so we are moving aggressively to put a zero trust framework in place around all of our cyber systems. We've increased our cybersecurity training. We've brought more cybersecurity experts on board. And I think that, at least in my experience working with pipelines and rail systems, airports and airlines, we have all collectively learned a lot in this process. And so I think the transportation sector is so much better off now 2 years later than we were when we first started putting these requirements in place. I'll give you one classic example. Back in May of 2021, we didn't know how many cyber incidents were occurring in the pipeline sector or in the rail sector or in the aviation sector. Now we have a reporting requirement, so we know. So if somebody gets attacked, they can call back to CISA, which is an important point because that's the central repository for that reporting, which has worked very well, and understand that, hey, I might not be alone here. There are others that are experiencing the same things, and to help them contextualize what's going on.
And if you would elaborate on that last point, I'd love to hear more about the way in which you're working with CISA and some of the successes and utility that you've gotten out of the relationship with CISA.
Yes, this is one of our key. We have really two key partners overall. One is with CISA. The other is with the Department of Transportation, because DOT has the safety side of the transportation sector, and oftentimes something that you might do for cybersecurity from a security perspective might have a safety impact that you're not mindful of, or vice versa. So we work very closely with DOT, the modes, FAA for aviation, the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Agency for pipelines, and also with the FBI from a threat perspective. So it's a very, very good relationship. And one of the things that we want to be able to provide to our industry partners is a more unified perspective on the part of the government agencies that are involved.